Okay, so good evening. My name is Noemi Hertzig, and I'm the director of the Jewish Cultural Arts and Education program at the JCC in Ann Arbor. I'm very excited to welcome you all to this Zoom program, Conversations with our host, Chuck Newman. Just a few housekeeping items. We are recording this session. If you choose not to be seen, please go to the little video camera symbol on the bottom left of your screen and turn the camera off by clicking on it. All attendees, you are muted to keep the noise level down. Please use the chat feature to send in your questions. You can also raise your hand by going to the reaction feature. The views expressed by Chuck Newman and his guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Ann Arbor JCC. All previous conversation recordings can be found on the JCC webpage at jccannarbor.org. And now it is my pleasure to call on Charles Newman.
Thank you, Noemi. You might and probably already have put in chat that link to past shows. There's some interesting stuff in there. Well, I have a weather report from Drummond Island for you. I understand it's windy up there, and you know, these days we've got to be resilient and resourceful. So it wasn't much, it was quite recently that I got an email from one of our guests tonight, Bob Chunn, saying, we have no power here, but I'll do what I can. And as you'll see when we start to interview Bob, he's coming to us by lantern light tonight. So, and it's nice to see so many of you. I'm not surprised because I think you and so many others recognize that our topic tonight really is significant. We're going to be living for 10 years with the results of the redistricting process. And we may not be at the end, but we're certainly at the end of the beginning. And as you'll hear later, we're going to detail just where we are. So thanks, Noemi, and thanks to the Jewish Community Center. And of course, thanks to our guests. We are going to get to know Bob Chunn and Yalcin Yanikoglu better and learn a little bit about them. They're both very impressive in their own right. And I think you'll assign great weight to what they have to say once you hear what they've done with their lives and what they have been doing with respect to the redistricting issue. We're going to delve into the background of the process of redistricting. Some of this, of course, will be redundant for some of you, and I trust some of you might learn something new. We're going to ask about where we stand now in the process, and we're certainly going to dig into the 15 maps that have been proposed by the Redistricting Commission. And then, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to learn what it is that we can do about influencing the maps that are actually adopted. And in chat, you should be able to find resources that will be valuable to the various aspects of our discussion this evening. So, Bob, I'm going to ask you first because your connection is the most uncertain. Why don't you describe how we met? You and I, and then yeah. Yalcin.
So we met at Borders actually, and I think it was when Recellular, your company, moved into the Borders headquarters, and I was in Ann Arbor, and I was one of the executives there, and we got to know each other over books, and is that as far as you want me to go, or do you want me to tell them
a little bit more about, what were you doing at Borders? And
well, I was running, I think at the time I was running Borders.com and the ebook program at Borders, and I think it was you who dragged me into entrepreneurship as well, if I remember correctly.
Right, and fortunately, you've forgiven me. Yeah.
Still
Bob,
dancing with the bear.
Yep, and Bob was the last officer with Borders. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the last last officer there, and helped to turn off the lights.
Yalcin, how did you meet this guy?
Well, I met him and you the same time. I've been a software engineer in Michigan, focusing on books and imaging, and basically publishing and printing was my thing for a long time. I came here for school at U of M and ended up staying. But I met you too for our previous endeavor, Contentoro, and more importantly, in 2019 and 2020 for the election work. And that was the most wonderful experience in my life. I love to believe that we made a lot of difference. We explored the relational organizing, and we made ballot tracking tools, and ended up very successful. And then after that, for the last year, we've been working on the Bob and I have been working on the redistricting issue, but that's where we are now.
And so you came here to go to school, but you never left, and you became an American citizen.
Yep.
Where did you come from, and why did you decide to make your life here?
So I came here in 1984 for graduate school. I'm a PhD dropout, everything but dissertation kind of guy.
Me too.
But I came here for the computer science, control systems, and loved here and raised two wonderful boys. They are more successful engineers than me now, but I loved it and I stayed.
But why? Why didn't you go home to Turkey?
Oh, I did go back for 2 years with the family and lived there, but by now I lived more of my life here, and this is my second home. So as they say in the movies, home is where you make it.
And Bob, up until we met, you had always been in corporate America. Is that correct?
True. Yeah, always, mostly in retail. So I made my way through the Michigan retailers of Meijer, Kmart, Borders, and after Borders, I was in Texas for a couple of years, and came back and ran marketing and advertising for Pet Supplies Plus in Livonia.
And from corporate America, you've been active in your own enterprises, really, I would characterize as trying to foster some of the best values of American democracy. Has it been as remunerative as working in corporate America?
I'd say more so, or I wouldn't continue to do it. I think it's so we have the luxury of bringing technology to an area that's really it has not been technology focused, and where digital and software tools can really enable people to be voters, to be more engaged in the political system than they were before. And I'd say, if there's something that Yalcin and I talk about most frequently, it's bringing easy to use tools and easy to understand tools to the public, that so that becomes the enabler for them to be more involved.
I think it's important to clarify that I think you mean remunerative in the sense that you get great satisfaction from it, as opposed to financial reward.
Absolutely. Well, we're working on both. I mean, we are a for-profit company, but we're activists, and we're definitely doing things that we believe in while we're trying to be financially successful as well.
Yeah, and I happen to know that you didn't get much pay for quite a while. So
we did not. We did not.
Yeah. And Yalcin, what are you doing every Sunday morning at 11 a.m.?
Oh, I knew you would ask that. I have a radio program playing world music. I've been doing this for the last 30 years. It's music from Cuba to Siberia to Japan, everywhere, and lots of African music. for an hour every Sunday. That's what I do on this on the student radio station of U of M here. It's one of those fun things that really adds to my life. I always say I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that.
And I have heard from time to time a fair amount of klezmer music as well, for which
Oh, that's one of my, it started as a lot of gypsy music. And as you know, gypsies carried a lot of lost klezmer music in the Eastern Europe during the World War II. There's a lot of connection and intermixing.
So,
And by the way, I know that klezmatics are coming to town, and I met them and I love them. So let me see if I can find some tickets for you.
all right, that'd be terrific. So when and how did you become involved with the redistricting issue?
I mean, Bob can. Go
Is
ahead,
that
Bob.
okay? Yeah. So last year, when we were working on the election, one of the tools that we made was called Ballot Power, and we actually registered Ballot Power as a nonprofit, and it's a voter enablement tool that helps people to track their absentee ballots. And ACLU found out about it, ACLU Michigan, and the person there who loved our tool, and we helped us to integrate it with ACLU's election campaigns. That person, Loida Tapia is her name. She's fantastic. When we finished with the election work, we loved Loida so much that we offered her a position on our board with Ballot Power. And our plan is to continue with election work and get out the vote. But Loida came from the Michigan Secretary of State prior to being at ACLU, and she was the one who had been charged. She was an executive director, and she had been charged with starting up the redistricting effort after Prop 2 passed in 2018. And she thought that we might be able to help get out the word about redistricting. And so that's kind of how we entered it, because we're a somewhat of a communications outreach type of technology. That's what we had done during the election. And she thought we would be great at that, and that was needed, and took us to the Secretary of State, introduced us to a lot of nonprofits around the state. And we shifted entirely our focus from just communications, which we still do, and that is core to what we do. But because I have such a brilliant software engineer for a partner, it was easy for us to fit into the world of redistricting. We made our own map making software, and we developed unique technology to analyze maps. So I'm excited to show people that.
Let's talk about that for a moment. Yalcin, why don't you describe the tool and what it does, and what information it uses to answer the questions that it does answer?
Yeah, gerrymandering is a very strange thing, because we got a lot of people behind the Prop 2 in 2018 with just saying, look, if a district looks like tentacles and you're 60% of the votes and you get 40% of the seats, that ain't right. That was good enough to move people. And but now that we have the actual work to be done, the actual problem with the gerrymandering become very obvious to us, which is lack of data, lack of understanding, moving that to easy to understand concepts, presenting to people. So that was clearly the objective for us. And that's what we wanted to make a tool that as maps come in, quickly analyze them, show what's behind the idea of this map, because it's really hard to tell otherwise. We wanted to make tools that in literally 2 minutes, 5 minutes, we can take a look at the map and say, oh, I see what you're trying to do in Flint. You're trying to disadvantage certain group or certain party. And if we can do that, I thought our job would be done. We don't even need to actually draw the maps ourselves. So that was our objective.
And what are the criteria that any map should be evaluated by as specified in Prop 2? Could you run down those criteria for us?
I have them visually. If you like, I can show them to you.
No, that's all right. We can, you can answer that question in that context. One of the things you had to do, of course, was to determine the likelihood for any given map, whether it would favor Democrats or Republicans. And what is the process that you went through, given a map, to determine the likelihood of the seats being Democratic seats or Republican seats?
So there are three kinds of maps, right? The congressional, state senate, and state house. Each map is made out of districts, and districts are made out of precincts, which is the smallest political seat, right? Every precinct has an election result, you know, this much for the Democratic Party, this much for the Green Party, this much for the Republican Party. And that determines who won that district. So we look at a map with 38 districts and say, oh, out of 38, 20 districts goes to Democratic Party, as 18 votes goes to Republican Party. That determines the actual seats and actual representatives for that chamber. So one of the criteria, you asked me what the criteria are. For us, one of the criteria that's important is whoever gets, whatever party gets the majority of votes should get kind of a seats in that chamber that is kind of representative of that vote share. Now, in 2016, there was a Republican majority. In 2020, there's a Democratic majority. We'd like to see a map perform in a way that gives more seats to Republican based on 2016 election results, and more seats to Democratic Party based on the 2020 election results. But that's only one of the criteria. This
Right,
is
let's
what
talk
we like
about this for one more second. So you looked at every single precinct in Michigan. About how many
Yep.
are there?
There's about 4,750 thereabout. Some precincts went away recently. In 2016, there was over 4,800, but we are equipped with the latest data. That's one thing that's unique to us, that we also are privy to 2020 election results. And that seems to be lacking in some of the other
Yep. So this is an important
other
point
tools.
that when you see what Next Vote and Yelchin's going to show you today, and you see the party split, he's determined that by looking in each of the districts on the map, the precincts they contain, and then taking a look at the characteristics of those precincts, and builds it all up. And if you think this is easy to do with software, it isn't. And that's what makes this tool so powerful. So
Yep.
why don't we take a look at the 15 maps that the commission is considering now? Can you take us through those?
Yeah, let me do that. I'm going to share my screen so you get to see the maps. But before we go to the maps, you know, we touched on the political fairness. Before I proceed, let me also mention that Bob is going to come and tell us what to do next. So don't feel like I'm hoarding the stage right now. But the other criteria simply is the Voting Rights Act compliance. A map should give minorities their districts where they are the majority. It should take into account community of interest, which we're going to call COIs. For instance, there's an Arab or Yemenite community in Dearborn. Their group and their area should be taken into account and should be enclosed in a single district if possible. Boundary preservation is another criteria, which means if you don't have to, you shouldn't cut cities, townships, villages, etc. contiguity means districts should be just one piece. The exception is Upper Peninsula. If it's split by a lake, that's okay. And then finally, the compactness. I'll show you a good example of that, where the districts shouldn't really be this snaky like shape to accommodate whatever the objective is. Now, the maps are either called tree names like elms or cherry, or the particular commissioner who authored that map gets to name the map, like Lang or Stella. By the way, everything I'm showing you here, you can get it at nextvote.us. So seat counts, like we mentioned, should reflect the elections. Population deviation is another one, right? This is actually one thing that's as a federal requirement for any map. That means if there's 13 districts in congressional map in Michigan, each district should contain equal number of voters. And that's very important. It can never be achieved to the one person, but lower numbers are better.
So each one in that case should have 1/13 of the total voting population.
Right, and I'll show you those numbers. It's, you know, and as we come to the state house maps, which are much smaller, each district becomes 91,000 people, whereas in congressional maps that are larger, there's only 13 of them, each district becomes 760,000 people. So
one thing to know as well is that these criteria, and there are 8 of them, these criteria are ranked. And so the most important criteria is population deviation, to make sure that you don't have a district of 1 getting a congressperson. And the least most important criteria is maintaining city and county boundaries. And
Yeah.
so when the commissioners or we are looking at maps, we have to look at them from the perspective of this ranked criteria, being that the Voting Rights Act sits well above keeping cities and counties whole, and partisan fairness, which is also it sits well above there as well. So making sure that no party is disproportionately advantaged by a map.
Yep. So let me go to these maps. You can see the names Palm and Cherry, but Linden, Kalamazoo, Stella, and Lang are the commissioner names. So individual commissioners sometimes introduce maps. The first column is the seats, and you see the election results. On top is the 2016, and the bottom is the 2020 election. Look at, for instance, Palm. It was 17 to 21 favoring Republicans in 2016, 20 to 18 favoring Democrats in 2020 elections. So that's a very reasonable approach. But we've seen really terrible maps throughout this year that gave like majority to Republicans or Democrats, regardless of the election results. So that would be a red flag. Maximum population deviation. Commissioner decided that congressional maps that are larger, their deviation should be under 1% or thereabout. Whereas House and Senate maps were asked to be under 5% deviation. Okay, that's just a rule for this year by the Michigan Independent Commission. We give you also how many cities that given, for instance, Chestnut cuts through 2 cities. That means Chestnut divides 2 cities, and we can tell you which cities those are in a second. And COI is not covered. So I'll show you this too. COI is a map, a region defined by this community themselves. And we helped more than 60 communities, or roughly 60 communities, draw their interests in maps and whereabouts and say to us, we are, for instance, LGBTQ community in Palmer Park, and we'd like to be kept in a single district. And you will see which maps cut that territory in half, making their voice weaker in essence. And
Yeah, I
this
think we're going to have to
column-
move up. We're going to have to move along to get through all 15 and the questions. One of the questions that came in is deviation from what? And I'll just answer that. It's deviation
Yeah.
from the average.
Right. So in this, let me actually go to a Senate map to show you these things in action. So we're looking at the existing map, right? So 266,000 is the ideal population. And you can see that, like, for instance, some districts, District 9 is overpopulated, District 17 is underpopulated, and we can look at this and see that. Okay, so this is District 17, and you can see that its population is below 2,066, and therefore it's -3 is the population deviation. But I want to show you also some of the other criteria that's at work, okay?
Okay, we don't have much time for it, though.
Okay. You know, here's a district that's very not compact, right? You can see that.
Is this one of the
And-
maps that was contributed?
This is currently enacted map. Now, this green area is the Detroit Latinx community, and you can see that how much of it is covered by this district, and the rest of them will be covered by this other district. But you can see that green area is divided by these two districts. In other words, they're always going to be, instead of let's say 40% of a single district, they're going to be 20 and 20% in each district. Therefore, their voice is going to be diluted, but we can tell that easily.
So one of the things, I mean, a bit of information about these COIs. So communities of interest were introduced into the Michigan redistricting effort this last round. So during 2018 in the Prop 2, the law around Prop 2 in establishing a Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And it's a really contentious criteria because so we spent a lot of time this last year working with groups all around the state who were wanted to tell the redistricting commission where they were, how many people they were. So I'll give you an example that we you know, a group that we work with quite a bit is LGBT Detroit, and they are in Palmer Park. And LGBT Detroit is an organization that helps LGBTQ people who also largely happen to be Black. And so they have, you know, a unique situation in their town and in their area of Detroit. And they were asking to be held together so that they could vote together. And what Yalcin's showing you on these communities of interest is kind of the end result of the work. So now we're looking at maps and we're seeing how well all of these communities of interest did against each one of the maps. And we work with these groups to go back to the commission and then argue for changes to the maps. So
Okay, can we look at the 15, please, the 15 proposed maps?
Yep. Before we go there, there's one last criteria we didn't talk, but I'm just going to mention it. It's the VRA. And that's the very contentious issue. And we can explain this to you later, but the higher numbers are better. Here are the maps that in the congressional maps, in addition to the enacted one, there is 5 that is proposed. And here's the seat count, population, cities, and COIs. COI and city numbers is better if they're lower. And the VRA numbers, higher is better. What that is
Which of these maps do you think is the fairest?
so we're gonna propose and ask you guys to go ahead and comment them. In here, I like birch.
Can
Chestnut
we
is
take a
good
look at it,
too.
please?
What's that?
Can we look at it?
Yeah, birch is this. And the nice thing about that is, look at this. In 2016, it gave the majority seats to Republicans, and 2020, it flipped. That's what we want on a fair map. Another thing it did
And
is,
I want to point out the reason for that. The reason that we look for it to be this way, so we're essentially applying this map to the results of the 2016 election, looking at all the precincts, like Chuck and Yalcin had talked about. So what should happen? This is a really complicated issue that has a lot of people upset, and I tell you, nonprofits all around the state struggle to talk about partisanship because it's against the charter of nonprofits to be partisan. But this is a criteria that's administered by the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. So it's fine to talk about. But what if we could look back there at that total, what we're expecting a good map to do is to show a slight majority in 2016 and for Republicans, and a slight majority for Democrats in 2020. And that's a test of real election results. Now, if you're out there watching, if you're out there looking at other organizations talk about their results, there are lots of companies, lots of groups who do analysis on maps, not a lot, but a few. There's a group called Plan Score. There's one called Dave's Redistricting. And then this is the complicating effect, is the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission has its own way of determining partisanship. And all of the others use a blend of elections. So if there are any statisticians on here, this is a blending of averages, which has a lot of potential issues, in that they're trying to predict what might happen. So when I see
in the average, they even
6-7, when I see this 7-6 to 6-7 in Birch, that's exactly what we hope the map would do, and that's a good indicator that it's fair.
So
yeah,
if-
look at Lang map, 5-8 in 2016 and 6-7 giving to Republicans in 2020 election results, where the majority of the blue party was 3 times the red party in 2016. But so those are red flags for us. Those are same thing is true for Apple version 2.
I think the people on this session would like to know which maps are fairest, at least in your opinion. And then let's assume for the time being that Birch is one that they would like to get behind. What kind of comments should they make or could they make in defense of Birch?
So this is great, and that's going to lead to Bob takeover. But just let me say that we're really in the middle of narrowing down. I could vote for Birch. I like Chestnut, and I also like Stella. So those 3 are ones that I can go behind. But I think we're in the process of narrowing down. In a day or two, there's an Ann Arbor public hearing coming up that's really crucial. You have to tell people and watch out for our invitation to come there and make your voice known. And also, hopefully, by then we're going to narrow down between the 3 good maps to which one is better. And
when you say there's going to be a narrowing down, do you mean the commission is going to shrink from 15 to fewer?
No, for
Probably.
us.
What we want to do is to try and point to and support the maps that we like, so that when and I'm happy to, maybe now is a good time to talk about what comes next.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to stop sharing, or do you want me to show it here?
No, I think it'd be very helpful to go
Uh,
through the maps and point out which ones, in your opinion, are good and why you think they're good, because I think people here are looking for guidance. It's very difficult for someone to understand the complexities of any one map. And so
I'm
to the
happy to
extent
do
that you
that.
can guide us on this, I think that would be helpful.
Go
I'm
ahead,
happy
Bob.
to do it, and I can do it with your, if you'll guide the clicks, Yalcin.
Okay.
So in the U.S. congressional maps, I'll talk quickly about Birch, Chestnut, and Zatella. So first, the one that sits on top, Zatella's map, she's one of the commissioners, and she happens to be chairing the commission in this last stage. And so hers is an individual map. It wasn't worked on collaboratively with the whole commission, but they're allowed to do this. And so they were allowed to submit their own individual maps if they want. We don't think that her map has a great chance because we think most of the commissioners are going to try to vote for collaborative maps first. So of the collaborative maps, which is Chestnut, Apple, and Birch, Birch and Chestnut are both very good maps, and they return almost equal results. They are not very different in their construction. So when you come to next vote and you want to, well, we'll go into that next. Let's look down at the Senate maps, and I'll point out which ones are good there.
So
Now,
one last thing, let me add, the Birch has lower population deviation than Chestnut, so that's a big plus. Go ahead.
So in the Senate, the maps that we like, you see Cherry flips gently from 1820 in 2016 to 2018 in 2020. That's the way that it should be. Not because we're looking at it from a democratic perspective, but from a fairness perspective, that's literally what happened in those two elections. Palm is also a decent map. Linden is the one that we like the most because it has competitive districts in it too. So even though it looks like it leans more Democratic, there are districts that are at play, more districts that are at play inside Linden than the others. And I want to point out one here that we're coming to like even more. And so Brittany Kellum is one of the commissioners, and she's one of only two commissioners that comes from Detroit. And if you had been involved in this and watched what happened at the Detroit hearings, where the commission went down to hear what the public thought their maps should look like, and they were reviewing the maps that they had drawn, there was a revolt. And it revolves around the Voting Rights Act. And so this is a big deal in redistricting right now, that there's a change in interpretation of the Voting Rights Act. And so if you were to look at previously the enacted maps, in order to be considered a voting rights district, a Voting Rights Act district, they had to have 50% plus one person as a minimum in one race, so that you could declare that Black people in Detroit should be able to elect whoever they want in a district where they have more than 50%. Right, that makes sense. But during this cycle, in order to unpack the cities and to make the map more fair overall, a decision was made that, in fact, maybe what the VRA's interpretation should be is that if Black people and Hispanic people could work together, for example, to get to a 40% population, then they would have more chances to elect people. And so this was the operating guidance that the VRA expert Bruce Adelson gave to the commission, and they took it up, and so did many others. And when they went down to Detroit, the people of Detroit said no way. At least many did. Many said no way. And so there still is no decision that has been made about the VRA. So to the point here, Brittany Kellum drew this map, and she went into Detroit. So she took the Linden map and changed Detroit, and she added at least one VRA district that has over 50%, and several more that have closer to 50%. So she really strengthened them and didn't sacrifice a lot in terms of partisan fairness. If you look, so her map it works pretty well. It's a little Democratic leaning in 2016. We would like to see a majority of Republicans there to win, but the 2020 results are spot on. And so what has been said to the commission is that you have to make a trade-off of Voting Rights Act for partisan fairness. So that's the discussion that's happening right now. But Brittany Kellum drew one of the commissioners drew a map that does both. So I want to point attention to that and say, if you wanted to support both VRA and partisan fairness, that's the map to pick. And then moving down to the House, this is where we have a problem. There is not and has not been one map put forward that gives Democratic voters the majority of seats in the state House. And this is where a lot of our problems come from in the state. So when we talk about, voter disenfranchisement bills and voter suppression bills and, ramping up to do what Texas did inside the Michigan State House with regard to abortion, this is a huge problem that we could go into the next 10 years with a map that doesn't treat Democratic voters fairly, doesn't treat Detroiters fairly. And Brittany Kellum didn't get a chance to go into Detroit to adjust that district. So when we get to what there is to do about the current state of redistricting, this is unacceptable. There isn't one fair map here.
Yeah, it is a blue state, and the best map has 56 to 54 Republican advantage, and that is just not acceptable.
This is a good time, I think, to address what should and could people do. And let's start with the State House maps. If someone wanted to have their voice heard, how would they do it, and what might they say, and to whom?
So the commission, and I want to give them credit because they are 13 average citizens chosen at random from the state, charged with drawing our maps, and they're doing a far better job than had been done in the past. But all that said, they've opened up communications to them. There are 3 ways that you can communicate with the commission. Number one, if Yalcin, if you could click on Hickory and take us to the commenting section, just pay attention to on next vote, maybe show one more time. So when you see
this little icon, I'm going to click on that and go to Hickory. And this is the Michigan, State of Michigan Commissioner's site. And that's that map.
So now we're looking at, if you could zoom in there, sir. Now we're looking at the MICRC's version of the what map did you click on?
And the MIRC is the Michigan.
This is Hickory. Hickory, unfortunately, unlike other maps, has a weird name here internally, but bear with it.
So the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, MICRC. This is the site that they set up to hear from Michigan citizens about what they like and don't like about the map, about this particular map. And if you see on here, there are green dots and there are red dots. and they're placed on specific locations. If we could go to Ann Arbor, I'll show people Ann Arbor. Now, we don't love the Hickory map, but it's the best of the worst. And so if you wanted to make a comment on this map, and for now, I would say skip making a positive comment and comment negatively about the worst maps that they have. But if you want to, if we zoom into Ann Arbor, you can see that a lot of people are commenting here. It's unfortunately, it's not as easy to move around as in Nextvote, so forgive us. So this is all of these green dots here are signs of approval, and so to place one, all you have to do is click on Add Comment, and it's going to ask you to click on a place on the map, and we're going to provide some guidance to you in an email follow-up that'll tell you a little bit more about what we think could be said about these maps, to give you some details that you can bring up if you'd like. But if you click on a space on the map anywhere, it's going to place a pin, and you get to choose whether you like or dislike the map. And you get to, and you need to fill this information out here and make a comment. And I think we should say, because this is Hickory, it's that thank you for trying, but we're looking for a fair map. And then you click Add Comment. And if you want to attach something, a document that you have, you can attach it here as well. But this is as clunky as it is. And you may be looking at it like, I don't know, I don't understand how they will know if this is good or bad. I think at the very least, they're going to sum the number of negative and the number of positive comments. And so if we like it, we want to say that we like it. If we don't like it, we want to make sure to let them know that we don't like it. And they'll at least be adding those up, and to determine which map they may want to vote for in the end.
So I don't see the submit button here, but
just add comment down there at the bottom.
you see, I don't, oh, it's my Zoom thing, it's hiding it. Sorry.
That's all there
There
is
you
to
go.
it.
So now I'm going to show you.
You're saying that if you go to the commission site, and that's in chat, I hope.
You go to Nextvote.
You can select a map, and then you can.
I would recommend that when you're looking at in Nextvote, see that little connector button icon next to the map's name. See,
That's
like Stella.
Directly to that's going to take you directly to that map on the on their site.
Yep. So if I click on Stella, you know, it'll open up Stella right away for you. And then you can add the comment there. Okay. So I wouldn't try to, you know, copy these long URLs. If you go to nextvote.us, does everybody see this little icon here next to the map's name? Right below here, there's a connector icon. Just click on it. It'll take you to the MICRC's site for a comment. Now, one thing I want to show you is that your comment will not be taken into account unless you go to your email. You're going to find that there's a email from the MICRC that you have to click on it so that they verify that that's, you know, that was you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't really have time to get into this great detail. If someone would like to learn more about this process, how could they do it?
I'd say if you want to know more, and we do need help. So we are looking for people who will go to the Michigan Union next week on the 18th and make a public comment.
And what's
So
going on the 18th?
So the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission is coming to Ann Arbor to hear from the public. So this is our chance. This is the last chance that we're going to have to make a comment directly to the commission in person, and they listen. When people come in person, they do listen. So in order to, if I could I'll put my email in here. If anybody is interested in coming to comment, learning more, you want to just get together and learn more about redistricting, we're happy to have a session and kind of show you around what we know. So just reach out to me.
Yeah.
So,
Can I also answer another question on the chat, that why is the house map is so bad? Because of the reluctance to cut up cities. And it's true. In fact, we took the Pine 5 map and we made a version, we called it Pine Sol, and did exactly that. Split up 4 cities, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, and Lansing and Flint. And we ended up with the seat count, perfectly. That problem it was gone. So one of the things that we need to tell you out of looking at hundreds of maps, this is not a situation that is impossible to solve at all, by any means. There has been house maps submitted by individuals just, to the portal under the assumption that the commission would look at them, and they did much better job in terms of partisan fairness.
Well, let's understand well, first of all, in summary, then you're saying come on the 18th if you're in Ann Arbor and comment. And the other is submit comments to the commission, which, as you point out, can be done through Next Vote, or you can go directly to the commission site. And what's the timetable here? When?
So we have at the end of this week, currently, so by tomorrow, we expect that they will officially release the data behind all of the maps that they've proposed. And that will be the point in time when the 45-day comment period starts. And that 45-day comment period is exactly what it sounds like. It's the public's chance to weigh in on the maps that are being considered by the commission. After that 45-day period, and we're estimating that this will be on 12/31, so on New Year's Eve, the commission is going to vote to adopt one of each of the types of maps. So one U.S. congressional, one state House, one state Senate. And so our chance, then the maps become official. And so we've got this 45-day period to really, make our voices heard about which one of these things we want. And I'll mention that there is a provision in the 45-day comment period whereby the commission could decide to make a new map, make adjustments to a map. And what happens is that 45-day period starts over again. And public can comment then on the revised maps. We would really like to see revised maps for the state house, I have to tell you. And so, anybody who wants to stand up there and say it's unacceptable to put up 5 maps that are almost identical to each other, that have no material differences at all, and give the majority of seats to the minority party, that's not fair. And so I think it's a false choice that we have sitting in front of us, that we have to choose one of these maps that disserves the citizens of the state.
Have you detected an enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats throughout this whole process?
I don't know if I'd say a gap, necessarily. There's gamesmanship all around. You can see that themes have come out. if you're talking about what's the predominant theme from the Republican side, keep cities together. Rural versus city. We're country people, and we're nothing like the people over there in Detroit. We're nothing like the people in Ann Arbor. We're not university people. We're in Lansing, not East Lansing. And so there has been a general resistance to being incorporated in a district with parts of a city. And that is the effect of that is called packing. And that is classic gerrymandering. And it is taking, if you have 90% Democratic voters in a district, 40% of their votes are wasted, essentially. And that's an easy way to get over a majority.
All right, why don't we go through some of the questions as quickly as we can? We're not going to get to all of them. Noemi, were there any in particular in chat that?
Yeah, I wanna answer one of them. I think that was a great question, or a comment that maybe we shouldn't really. It is true that it's false choice, but I think this is Chris that says, but I think we have to weigh in for the least unfair and against the worst. We can follow multiple strategies, but honestly, we're a tech company, and I think there are a lot of organizations, nonpartisan organizations working on this. Our job is to make these numbers known to people. Another comment earlier on was is that lack of decent house map due to the cities not being divided? Yes. And I would add a question, is that an undoable process? No, we did produce a map that did achieve better seat split and based on pine. So
which maps pit current members of Congress against each other as we reduce the delegation by one? You have any insights to that?
We didn't focus on that at all, and actually it is specifically excluded from redistricting work at all. So I know a lot of groups are looking at that. Who's going to be competing for which seats. We didn't look at it at all because incumbency is excluded from the process. So it wasn't allowed to be considered, so we didn't.
Yeah, and Caroline Nathan's asked a similar line, is that how can we argue to the commission about lack of accurate partisan representation if this is not one of the redistricting criteria? It surely is one of the redistricting criteria. We have collected many books and theses about that, and we can send them to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Chuck. I know we're
No, that's fine. Finish it up. The only thing is I want to make sure that, again, this is very complex, and you've done a nice job at trying to simplify the process for us, or our understanding of the process, but I want to make sure that there's places that people can go after this session.
Yeah.
To learn more. And do we have everything we need in the chat? So
I want to put down nextvote.us, and I want to answer one more question here. It says, how can your fixed up house map can be introduced to the commission? We already did. And they opened up a really good venue. They said, if you have modifications on any of our maps, instead of introducing a map and saying, take this, let us know. We did. And we only edited less than 20%, roughly 20% of pine, and made a direct list of what precinct goes from what district to the other to make it better, and we submitted it. We
So how
are
can
only
people
hoping.
support that?
I'm sorry?
How can people support your map?
It's not really on commissioner's site. So, maybe in your comment.
It would be here's what people could do if people want to, if they want to help. It's not our map that should be the topic of conversation. It's this. there were hundreds of maps made by Michigan citizens. They were requested by the Michigan Secretary of State, and they were requested by the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Hundreds of maps. We analyzed all of them. And there are really good maps in there, maps that are better than what the commission drew. And this is not an opinion. You know, we're looking at numbers behind the maps, right? Like we're not taking a visual survey of the map and determining if it's good or bad. We're looking at the statistics behind it. So we see good maps, and we see good maps of Detroit. And what we have asked the commission to do is to take the work of the citizens of Michigan into account. You asked for it, they made it, it's better than what you did. And why can't you take the pieces and parts that are good and replace the pieces and parts that are bad on yours?
So how do they get that message to the commission?
They can go the best way to do it. And I'll help you, we'll help you. We work with groups all over the state that are helping prepare people for doing testimony. We can get you warmed up and tell you how it will go there. And we'll have people to meet you there if you'd be willing to go. That's number one. Number two, you can write an email to the commission, and we'll follow up with that email address. I wish I had it handy here, but I don't. And number three, you can make a comment and use the red dot, green dot system on the maps that are better. And you can say, hey, I like this map, but I wish that it was a little more fair. And I know that you have hundreds of other ideas that have been submitted to you. Please look at those.
Okay.
One more thing from the questions here. Why isn't the Dems proposing a better map? Some liberal organizations proposed 2-3 really good maps that we liked. For instance, AFL-CIO's map and the Promote the Votes map. Those two are really good, and they don't have any of those house map problems at all. For a long time, we promoted them. We asked the commission to take a look at them. But we're at a point, like somebody said earlier, you know, we're given a false choice. Like there's no more point or entry saying give us more maps, or what other map we can look at this point, unfortunately. Is that true, Bob? I mean, we're at that point right now.
We are at the point where, and I see Chris Andrews in here commenting about you know, what we should be doing, and it is a long shot that they're going to make a new map or make adjustments to the map in the 45 days. Our best strategy is to pick the good maps and go and make sure that we scream about them, we raise them up, and we push down the ones that we don't like. And we all get, it would only take a minute. The bar is very low. I have to tell you, the bar is very low. So there are hundreds, not thousands of comments, hundreds. And so if the people who are on here, there's 83 participants on here. If 83 people went and commented on Kellum's map, Senate map, as an example, and said, this is what we want for the city of Detroit, it would scream to the commission. It would scream.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to write up a little something, and we will send it out. Okay.
I will.
Yep.
Right?
So one of the question is, Bob, are you organizing a session for people to go further on this? How do people participate?
So for now, please send me an email if you're interested in participating in I'm putting my email in here again.
Good.
And you know, as Yalcin said, we're a technology company, but we like to help this process along. We're also activists. And so we will, at the very least, make sure that anybody who's interested in doing some more gets hooked up with an organization who can do it. We work with Voters Not Politicians, League of Conservation Voters, ACLU Michigan, League of Women Voters. We're part of a 20 organization coalition that is all working towards fair maps. And we've got lots of resources to help you. So please just reach out to me. We'll make it easy and painless.
And it needs to be said one last time is that many of those organizations Bob mentioned are extremely nonpartisan. We would not, and none of them would tolerate a gerrymandered map by the other group, by Democrats at all either. I mean, that's very true.
Okay, well,
been
we're in
important.
overtime. Thank you for your valiant efforts. Bob, could you show us the lantern that has been illuminating you? So we've had people who've sacrificed to be on this on a Zoom session with us, but I don't think anybody can top that, Bob. And
I don't know.
thank
I
you,
no
Yalcin.
sacrifice here, Chuck. No sacrifice. I've
Thank
loved
you.
it.
And thank you, Noemi, and thank you all for Zooming in tonight. As I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be living with this for 10 years, so let's try and get it as right as we can get it. And got lots of additional exciting shows coming up yet in December, and maybe another one even in November. So stay tuned. And again, thank you very much.
I'm going to leave it open just a little bit for people to copy email addresses and all that. So I'm going to